decided something. What have you decided? I have decided
that.
When we're born, we have a mommy and daddy, right? And then when we grow up and get married, we have children of our own. And then our children grow up and get married and have children. And so on and so on. So it's very important and very fun also to...
Hi, welcome to Interesting Sex Podcast, a show about who, how, where, and why we fuck. I'm Miranda, your host, and I like to talk to people about fetish, kink, BDSM, and anything that's not too vanilla. So I hope you enjoy the show, and thank you for being here. Feel free to go onto Apple Podcasts or wherever you listen, give us a rating, give us a follow, share it with your friends. I'm super happy to be making season 2 for you. Today's episode I am very excited about. I have waited 35 episodes to be able to get a furry. This is Waffles. He's amazing. He wears a fursuit. He's so fun. He also does really naughty things in his fursuit and is super sexy. So I have been really excited to find someone who wanted to open up and talk to me about the world of fur. So thank you for being here. If you didn't happen to listen to season 2, episode 3 with Sophie, she has an amazing company called Lovers and Friends. She is giving the first month for 50% off to my listeners. So if you go and apply at lvrsnfrnds.com, she's giving 50% off the first month, and apply and get accepted. You can use promo code ISP for 50% off your first month. It's a really amazing community. They get to talk about things with people all over the world, about questions that they have within the sex community, or probably most things anyway. And you can also meet really cool, like-minded people. The link is also in the show notes below. Got to take a really quick second to tell you guys about our new partnership I'm stoked about, Tushy. HelloTushy.com/ISP for 10% off. I got a bidet with them, and it's a very exciting experience, and my butthole has never been cleaner. So when you wipe your butt with dry toilet paper, does it remove all the shit? No, I don't think so. That's why you get little poop spots on your underwears. I think they're called skid marks, and they're not cool. If you were to get poop on any other part of your body, would you just wipe it off with dry paper? No, you would use a wet cloth to get it off, to make sure you are clean. And that's exactly what Tushy is. It's a sleek bidet attachment. It clips right onto your existing toilet and sprays your butt completely clean with fresh water. And when I say fresh water, it's not toilet water. Tushy connects to the water supply behind your toilet to spray your dirty parts with clean, fresh water. It's the same water that you brush your teeth with. They're now offering free shipping, and with HelloTushy.com/ISP, you get 10% off your products. So that's exciting. Their classic bidet is only $79 with this. I know a lot of you like to do dirty things with your buttholes, so how about you clean your butthole and get yourself a Tushy? HelloTushy.com/ISP. And while you're doing your bathroom poopies, why don't you check out the book While You Were Pooping? It's an inappropriate children's book for adults. All the pictures are drawn with coloring pencils, so it looks like a 12-year-old drew it, but everyone's naked, and it's very inappropriate. So while you're pooping, your ex got laid, or while you're pooping, a dolphin got caught in a net. It goes all over the place. It's a great book, super fun. You can find it on Amazon. You can even look up the pictures if you went on Google, whileyou'repoopingbook.com, or you can find it on Amazon, While You're Pooping by the Anonymous Pooper. Okay, now back to our show. So with no further ado, let's open our ears, our hearts, and our holes and give a nice warm welcome to Waffles.
Hello, this is Waffles.
Hey Waffles, this is Miranda calling from Interesting Sex Podcast.
Hey, how you doing?
I'm great. How are you doing today?
Doing great. Are you ready to indulge yourself in the wonderful world of kinky costuming?
Yeah. I didn't even know it was called kinky costuming, so I'm already learning.
Yeah, I mean, it's a pretty big community, and depending on what you're talking about specifically, different terms are used. Specifically, I'm a big, not necessarily a fursuiter, but someone that uses fursuits for the act of sex.
Okay. And some people just dress up in suits for not sex, right?
Absolutely. Actually, that's probably the majority of people. Yeah, the people that use it for sex is a pretty small minority.
Oh, well, I'm glad I found you. So let's get started. I want to ask you who you are as a human on planet Earth, like how you identify as a person, if you identify as a person, and how you identify sexually.
Sure. I identify as a pansexual, just regular cis male. I'm in a gay relationship. Yeah, that's about it. I don't put a ton of stock in identity, so usually those are the terms I just jump to.
Okay. So you're basically a male that born male, identify mostly as male, and you are currently in a relationship with a male, but you are attracted to anyone that you are attracted to.
That's exactly correct.
Okay. I'm learned so much in the last season. How long have you been in your current relationship?
Ooh, it's fairly recently, only about 7 months.
Oh, is it going well?
Yeah, it's actually going really well.
That's awesome. I know this is probably a silly question, but a lot of people I think get worried when they have a partner who's bisexual or probably, I guess, pan well, I don't know if you're monogamous or not, but people get worried that they won't ever be able to fulfill their person's fantasies or needs.
We actually have a fairly open relationship. And for us, it's almost more of a trust thing where I'm so confident in my partner that they can go out and do just about anything with anyone. But I have the understanding that we're still only dating emotionally together. I mean, physically, whoever they're attracted to is only really their business. But at the end of the day, we're the only one that are connected romantically.
Okay. Do you think you could ever have just one person, or do you think it's important for you to have a community of lovers?
I don't know. I think I guess if I found the right person, I could be with one person. But for right now, I feel so young and there's so much out there that I'd love to try.
Yeah. How old are you?
Ooh, I'm 26.
Oh, that is young. Welcome to the adult world. You can rent a car now, and you aren't on your parents' insurance.
I'm waiting for that the car insurance to go down, but that's the last one to look forward to.
So let's get into kinky costuming. You specifically dress up as animals.
Mm-hmm.
And can you just talk to me a little bit? Well, first of all, what's your Instagram handle in case people want to look you up? It's also available in the show notes, but if people are listening and are curious about how you dress and who you are, they can look you up so they can kind of envision you while you're talking.
Absolutely. So my Instagram is @sushiotter. And then if you'd like to see my adult content, it's Twitter @sushiotter.
Okay. So tell me a little bit about your costumes, or I don't know if they're costumes or if they're outfits. How do you feel?
The proper noun is fursuit. So that's the big costumes. And these are they're always one of a kind. They're, handmade by someone and they take a while to get. But usually they're a kind of, in the same way that people use puppy play masks as a different version of an identity. It's very similar to that. It's just a way to kind of like a D&D character or a video game avatar. It's just a different representation of the self.
Okay.
But in this case, a giant animal.
Okay. So, you have multiple costumes, right?
Mm-hmm.
What was the first one that made you feel at home?
What do you mean by at home?
I guess in my head, I just assumed that if you're dressing up and using these costumes, there's something about them that makes you feel yourself in a different kind of way. And so I guess I considered that as a place where your soul felt safe and kind of at home in a different character other than yourself.
Yeah, okay, so if I understand what you're asking, the costumes absolutely work as a way to try out new things, but with a nice safety, it's not me that's doing it, it's the character. And then through proxy, I'm interacting with the character.
Yeah, but then the character would be something that you feel safe as. They're oh, this is where I belong.
Yeah, it's absolutely kind of a safe space to try out new headspaces or kinks or kind of anything in that realm. But that also extends probably to almost everything else. There are a lot of things I would never do as the person me, but when you're wearing a giant 6-foot-tall animal costume, it's quite easy, in fact.
Right. It always makes me think about Clockwork Orange and how they wear those outfits and go around town, and you can just be a different character just by putting something else on.
I promise you I'm not beating the elderly.
Okay, so let's start with how how you decided and how you came into the world of fursuits and this community.
Sure. So almost all of this is the furry fandom, and then fursuit's kind of a specific offshoot of that. And almost all of this is because, younger, just growing up on the internet, as a lot of us kind of do when you're younger. I found the furry fandom through just kind of online forums and stuff like that. I really wanted it to be real. Like, instead of these kind of cartoon characters on the computer, I wanted to be like the real cartoon character, but that actually could interact with people and could actually be somewhere and interact with other people. And so that's why I kind of got into the costuming side of it.
So, like, how old were you when you were looking at characters and you're like, I wish I was that character and want to interact as a cartoon?
I think I just always have really enjoyed them. I mean, ever since I was a kid, like the classic cartoons and, back then the cartoons and stuff like that. I've always had, the fascinations for like werewolves and, stuff like that.
Yeah. Did you have a favorite cartoon as a kid?
I think it was probably actually like Calvin and Hobbes.
Ah. I used to buy my brother a Calvin and Hobbes book every Christmas.
The classic cartoons.
Yeah, they're good. So then as you got older and realized that that was something that you actually is obtainable, how did that transition look from going into like, oh, that would be cool to I'm doing this?
Actually, I was involved in this community for quite a long time before I even purchased my first one. I mean, they're very expensive. They take a long time to get. So my first interactions were, like meeting people that owned one, like actually like, oh, here's, meeting someone at a convention and like, here's this giant animal man. I know him personally and I can talk to him and I can kind of interact with him in that context. And then from there, slowly like borrowing other friends, extra suits and then, interacting in that kind of way. And then eventually I got enough time and free money to, buy my own costume.
Yeah. How did you pick your first costume?
Ooh, it was actually, I was so concerned about that. I gave the artist full license to make whatever they wanted.
Oh.
And they made me a huge 6 foot tall, massive otter. I was very excited. It's very huge.
Is that the one that takes up the whole couch?
Yeah.
Okay, I've seen
very
pictures.
Large.
He's very cute.
It's hard to describe without actually seeing him in person. But yeah, he very much takes up a whole sofa. Or he's about one door frame wide is how I describe him best.
Yeah. How much is a fursuit costume, if you don't mind?
Something on the very high end, so something like what I own, it would cost about $4,000 to $5,000.
Yeah. And then what was your first convention that you ever went to? Like when you were around a bunch of people that you saw just enjoying themselves in their costumes?
This would probably be back in like the early kind of 2000s, like 2010, 2011. This is back that things before were a little bit more organized. They were like just kind of casual meetups, through the internet forums and stuff where you'd have, 15, 20, 30 people in like a small room or a small house party kind of scenario.
So do you put on your otter when you got there? Because it's probably hard to drive. Getting in an Uber in an otter suit.
I didn't quite have the otter yet, but interactions like that are always fun. We have suited before, like with Ubers and stuff, and usually people love it. Some people want nothing to do with it, but it's kind of half the fun too.
Right. Does your boyfriend dress up as well?
Yeah, they have a huge plush sheep costume.
Oh, that's fun.
Yeah.
So you don't have like a specific reason that you feel like you were drawn to this world in the first place. It's just something that you always felt that you would connect with.
I think the tangibility of being able to like physically interact with these huge characters and like feel the fur and like actually get your hands on it and hug them and touch them and there's so much going on there, and I feel like that's the most enjoyable part. And I think even myself at a younger age really enjoyed that.
Yeah. I mean, like I used to really, there was a radio station where I lived called Q99, and there was a hockey team, and the Q99 bear would always be there, and you always like want to go hug the mascot.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. And it's like very exciting to get to go hug this giant bear.
The way I look at it is, who doesn't want a giant werewolf boyfriend?
Yeah, I guess that is super duper hot. When did it turn into something that was sexual for you?
I think that aspect was almost always there. Growing up as a young adult, especially with, no just unfettered internet access and, no parents around, I think there's really it's just the community I happened to kind of land into was the one that happened to be with giant animal costumes. It's like, oh, I really enjoy this, and this is what I kind of grown up with.
Right. So your parents weren't home much?
No.
I'm sorry.
I mean, it is what it is. I can't control that.
Yeah. Did you masturbate to fursuits when you were younger and in that world? Like,
I mean, when you put it like that, it's a bit crass, but the answer is very much absolutely. And I think it's important for audio listeners to understand that these aren't just like when you think of a mascot costume at like a sporting event. A lot of these are very much stylized and like a very bedroomy face and that kind of sly, devious grin. And they're not what you think of when you think of like, giant sporting bear. A lot of times they're very, I don't want to say they have a sex face, but they look like they look kind of more adult than that.
So that was always part of your like background with it. And so when was the first time you got to experience that in real life, a sexual interaction?
It's important to kind of discuss what is a sexual interaction.
Yeah.
Because that by itself is actually a really complicated question. So anything from like, casual friends groping to, I personally don't do any like full-blown penetration with any of my costumes. It's just not something I'm personally interested into. But, stuff like that came much later down the road with, the more heavy adult aspects. But, everything from, very light bondage play at the very beginning to, stuff like that,
Well, you have a blue character.
Mm-hmm.
What is that character? Are they all named Waffles or?
The blue one is Waffles. And then the giant red otter is Sushi. Or
Okay.
Taco, sorry, Taco.
Taco. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Do each of them like to do different things?
Absolutely, yeah. So like the big plush otter is it's a very safe for work suit. Like that's kind of classically when people think of like a big stuffed animal costume, kind of like romping around. That's kind of that character. And on the other hand, I have kind of the total inverse of that, where I have like this sly, devilish raccoon who, just bondage is a bit more adult than Instagram would like him to be. And so they absolutely allow you to explore different headspaces and kind of different energies, and you kind of take on the suit when you wear it.
Right. So Taco's a little bit more on the playful side.
Absolutely, yeah. He's a huge plush otter that knocks over literally everything in the room. Like this is half the fun of it.
What are you like? Do you think you're a mix between both of them, or how do you feel?
Absolutely. At the end of the day, it's just me, but a different version of me exaggerated. That's how I think about it.
Do you like one better than the other?
It's like asking which kid do you love more.
I won't tell them.
Probably the otter. It's such a blast. It's so big. People love it. Not to say I don't love the raccoon too. The artist did wonderful work. But yeah, being that, when you get away from you look so different than just like a generic human, that it's fun to be that different. Yeah.
We were talking about like what sexual experiences look like as like not sex. But you're talking about like groping a friend. Was that one of your first experiences? And how do you get your paw into your friend's suit? What's that like?
Typically the hand doesn't go into the costume quite like that. Usually it's just kind of heavy petting is probably a better verb.
Okay.
Yeah, a lot of the more common stuff in these costumes are like, wand plays and entrapment. Like a lot of times these costumes have kind of hidden locks on them to keep people locked in, and leashes, harnesses, stuff like that. Yeah, and at this point I've done almost all of it.
Okay. What do you mean by like being locked in? What does that look like?
You can't take the suit off. So a lot of times we'll have little locks in the back of the neck to prevent the wearer from taking the head off.
Uh-huh.
And the whole play, just like any kind of chastity-esque scenario, is that you're kind of at the whim of someone else.
Okay, so that's a little bit more of a submissive moment for you.
Yeah, absolutely.
Do you get hot in there? Like I'd be like, let me out.
Well, like any community, there is communication and stuff like this. It can only be so fun until you realize that we are humans, and you need water, and you need a break, and these costumes are very hot.
Yeah.
So we think about all that kind of stuff.
Have you ever put a thermometer in there with you?
I personally haven't, but I mean, it's like a sauna, like literally a sauna. Like you'll be drenched in sweat whenever you take this off if you're going for like more than 30 minutes.
Whoa. Maybe that's why you're so thin.
I appreciate the compliment.
Yeah, you don't even have to go work out. You just put on your suit at home and just like watch some TV, and you're like, I lost 5 pounds. Um, okay, so will you? I like don't. It's like awkward because I don't even really know where to start asking questions from because I've never been in this scenario or even know how to ask when you say like I've done it all. Like, can you just share some stuff with me and we can go from there?
Sure, absolutely. So there's 3 big approaches on people being adult with their fursuit. The first one being it's just a regular costume. There are no holes. There's nothing. And then a lot of times people just kind of heavy padding or, a lot of times you see magic wands, stuff like that. That's kind of the first big approach people take. The second one is there will be a hole. It's called a strategically placed hole, for the genitalia of their choice. And then the third approach are people just wear their heads to the bedroom, almost like the pup community does.
Okay.
Those are kind of the big 3 ways you see these costumes kind of used in the kink community.
You said that you don't really do penetration when you're in the costume.
Yeah, not to judge on anyone, of course. It's just my personal preference. So none of my costumes have holes in them.
Okay. Have you ever done sex with just the head on?
It's not something I'm personally interested in. I have in the past, but it's just not what I'm interested in.
Yeah, you got to try it and to know that you're like, wait, that's not for me.
Mm-hmm.
Does it make your head like wobble around?
Well, a lot of times it's the weird things that take me out of the moment. Like it's like this kind of like little skinny twink and like this big costume head, and you're like, oh, this doesn't make sense. And it's little silly things like that. Come on now.
Are there more males you think in the furry fandom, or is it have a lot of females as well?
I like most internet-based fandoms, it's pretty heavy male-dominated. I don't have any numbers, but to guess, I would say like 80-20.
Yeah. Huh.
It ends up being kind of weird. I should say weird because that's kind of like judgmental. It ends up being kind of heavy, kind of gay romantic too. I would say the majority of the fandom is either bisexual or gay. It leads into kind of a weird scenario where straight people end up becoming a weird minority.
Yeah. How big are your hands in this suit? Can you do things?
Yeah.
You can't use your phone and stuff.
No. So this depends a lot on the costume. So for my 2 costumes, the raccoon has just kind of regular hands, like wearing like a thick glove. The otter has a lot of stuffing in his hands, so it actually makes doing regular mundane tasks quite difficult. And then, for example, my boyfriend's suit, he has full-on like hooves that make it almost impossible to do almost anything.
Oh, because he's a sheep.
Flat cartoon hooves. And kind of the fun of that fursuit is the fact that you really can't do anything. You can't open doorknobs. You can't grab things. You can't do anything. You can't even get out of the suit without help. And that really makes it a lot more fun. And depending on the mood, it can make it quite kinky too. You are trapped in here without someone else's help to get you out.
So even though you don't do penetration, you still like play. You've been magic wanded in your costume?
I've been both the magic wandee and the magic wander. Yeah, of course.
Okay, I've heard about girls getting magic wanded on their clit, but I haven't really actually heard of guys being magic wanded.
I guess I've recently come across the same thing too. It's fairly common in this community because it works so well with the costumes.
Yeah.
A lot of times, at least with women I know, they usually have to put a towel over just because it's so sensitive. It's such a powerful little thing.
Yeah.
But with the costume there, it's effectively you already have the kind of towel there.
Right.
So it just works really well for how it is.
Do you wear underwear in there?
You do actually, yeah. That's not a bad question. There are no stupid questions. You actually wear like a full Under Armour kind of like pants and like a long sleeve shirt to prevent sweat getting into the suit.
Okay, so if somebody is going to use their magic wand on you and you happen to ejaculate, it's not going to get on your $5,000 suit.
Well, I still wash the suit afterwards.
Oh, you wash that whole thing?
Yeah, of course.
Every time you wear it?
Not every time I wear it, but if I'm doing anything sexual, of course I'd wash it. But yeah, you can put it in the washing machine, actually. You just turn it inside out.
Oh. Because that's where the cum gets.
Well, it's just easier, too.
Do you like bondage when you're not in your costume? In your fursuit, I mean?
Probably. Yes is the answer, but I would like it much, much more if I could somehow convince a friend to help me out with the like locking the costume up as opposed to locking me up.
I guess it's kind of hard to tie someone up if you have your suit on. So I guess when you get tied up, people help you without it.
I'm sure you've seen at least some of the photos I've posted. And a lot of times these photos are pretty, I don't want to say staged, but it's a lot of communication that goes on to even get that far.
Yeah.
A lot of times we'll do everything ahead of time as much as we can, and then like have the heads off, and then like even sometimes the hands off. And then when actually we come to take the photos or kind of do more adult kinky things, from then we'll kind of, okay, the head's going on, we're entering kind of a kinky space now. Because it's just, you get so hot and, it takes so much time to kind of get all that role play going.
Okay, so say you're having a scene with somebody and it is not for a photo.
Oh.
And you just want somebody to come over and tie up Waffles. Let's just pick Waffles.
Sure.
So if Waffles is, because I've seen Waffles tied up. So Waffles gets tied up. You take a break by having your head off, and then you put your head on, and then what does the scene look like?
I mean, it's entering kind of it's entering like a kinky headspace, at least for me. So, I don't want to say like it's a meditative experience. I'm not thinking very hard about kind of situation. I'm just kind of enjoying how everything is unfolding. Yeah, it's kind of hard to describe in that sense. I'm sure you
try.
Ooh, I can try. I try my best. I don't want to say a lot more animalistic because it sounds so cliche in this kind of scenario, but yeah, a lot more animalistic, a lot more feral, a lot more. I don't necessarily care about the situation I'm in. I just want to experience these emotions and feelings, and I really want, it's just much more kinky, and I enjoy that.
How are your emotions different when you're in your fursuit going through these experiences? Are your emotions different and more animalistic than they would be as regular cis male?
I think it allows me to kind of be in this space without thinking about it. Because, from the outside looking in, it's like, oh, it's just a big weird animal costume. That's kind of silly. But when you're put in that place and you put the head on, you're like, well, I'm no longer thinking about this kind of like own self-judgment against myself. I'm allowing myself to be in the situation without my own personal judgment.
Right, because nobody can see your face anyway.
That's a very good point.
Yeah, so if you're like out in public and stuff, no one would even know it was you. Whereas if you're just at like a kink club being tied up, like you're vulnerable in the way that people can see you.
Yeah, it allows you to take on a new identity, even if that identity in this case is, allowing myself to be kind of kinky, without the kind of baggage attached to that, or at least for me.
But I want like kind of details of what actually happens sometimes once you're tied up.
So if just running through kind of a mental scenario, so let's say a friend ties me to a chair and then now the head goes on. A lot of times it would be kind of, moaning, groaning, kind of trying to get out, trying to actually break free of the ropes, being teased, stuff like that. And then typically these scenarios go further. Well, you might be tied up and then now we're going to press this wand into your crotch, and we might put blindfold on the costume so now you can't see it all. Now we might just throw the chair over and now you're on the floor. Stuff like that, yeah.
Oh, that gets a little rough.
Yeah.
So do you talk when you're in your suit? Or are you just making animal noises?
In a kink type scenario, I almost never talk. Unless it's kind of to break character and like I'm getting too hot or something in that nature.
Right.
No, it's very rarely would I ever say anything. A lot of times it's just kind of a headspace, and a lot of it's just kind of like, moaning and, your classic kind of animalistic noises that people make when they're in the mood with other people.
Yeah. And then so if the person that you're with that is the one that's tying you up and torturing your Waffle character in this scenario that we're talking about, are they usually a person as a human, or are they another furry character?
Almost always they're just a regular person, and that's just for practicality's sake.
Right. And is it like animal abuse or like what is the relationship that happens? Like what would be like a story background?
I've never, as much as I've always wanted to do like the dog catcher coming to fix the plumbing. I don't know. No, usually there isn't much of a story to these things. A lot of times, Unless there's like we're doing like a themed shoot in like a specific story kind of setting.
Right. Because raccoons are pretty naughty animals. They're kind of assholes. So like they get in your trash and someone comes and gets you.
I've never acted this out before, but it could be a quite fun thing when that, we have the devious raccoon eating garbage and oh no, someone got caught,
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm sure that'd be a fun little photo shoot or a little video that someone could do.
Right. Then you get caught and then you get put into a cage because you're in big trouble. And then they're kicking the cage and you're like whimpering in there trying to get out and you can't get out.
I mean, this sounds like a wonderful time for me. I don't know about other people. I would love to be put in a giant cage.
Yeah. So you're welcome.
Thank you.
Do you usually feel more submissive when you're in your fursuit?
Yeah, typically when I'm in my fursuit, it's more submissive. And then typically when I'm playing with other people, I'm probably more aggressive and dominant.
When you're playing with other people outside of your fursuit?
Yeah, sorry, I didn't clarify that. Yeah, so if I had a friend that was in their costume, I'm typically, if I'm out of suit, I'm almost always more in the more dominant role.
Okay. Even if neither people are in the suit, you tend to be more dominant.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. And then the suit is a place for you to play with your more submissive side. Maybe that's why it's more comfortable for you to be in the suit for that space.
Possibly, yeah. It could be one thing. I do occasionally kind of be the more dominant role in the suit. I'll pin someone down to the ground and then, like step on them or, press a wand into them or something of that nature. But it more typically that just from the physical action of it, it gets too hot too quickly. And these scenarios, right. Yeah. So it typically just for the practicality of nature, it's more submissive in that nature.
Okay. And then Taco, there's probably not a mean bone in Taco's body.
You say that, but it's easy sometimes when you're that big and you can just push people over and jump on people.
That's funny.
I wouldn't say mean, probably problematic in the sense that if you're laying there and I know you're personally okay with it, I'm just going to lay on you on this sofa. Right.
He's more of a little troublemaker on the cartoon where he's just like a big doofus.
Just a big brat.
That's funny. Like, does your family know?
Yeah, they know it.
What's the conversation like? Like, how is it for people to like come to an understanding? Like, even the listeners right now, a lot of people are very excited. My friends and people that know I'm talking to you because they're so curious. It's so outside of a realm than a lot of people can like fathom.
Yeah, the conversation happened several years ago, and my mom was like, "Oh, I don't remember what it kind of was, but it was a very like kind of awkward, like, oh, this is a thing that you do, and we're never going to be the ones to bring it up, but occasionally I'll bring it up, and they're okay with it." I think there's kind of a mutual understanding that there is a sexual aspect, but of course we'll never talk about that. At least now, never with my family.
Right. But, do you get along with your family, or are you kind of like, well, fuck you guys, you weren't ever there in the first place?
No, my family tried very hard. They're a very poor working family. They tried very hard to raise me well.
Okay.
No, we just have a distance relationship. I moved away quite far, so.
Where do you live?
I live in Florida.
Oh, it probably gets even hotter there in your costume.
Just the humidity. Oh, you get so sweaty.
Yeah.
Where I'm in a scenario where I can really be kind of a big bratty dom, right? I can push someone to the ground and I have a magic wand in one hand and I can really just, playfully tease them with it or stuff like that. I think that kind of light bondage-y kind of dom energy, I think some of my favorite to be when in a fursuit at least.
Is that Waffles or that's the same for Taco?
That's for Waffles. I don't typically ever get super adult with Taco just because it's such a different kind of headspace. That it's almost always a more safer work suit.
A more safer work suit, you said?
Yeah, like I don't. Yeah, it's just not a very kinky fursuit as opposed to the like sly looking devilish raccoon.
Right. So that one's like when you're just a little bit more chilling and playful and like. Yeah. Okay. And Waffles gets wild.
Yeah, it's like he's the after dark. He's the all my kind of adult horny energy goes into this giant sly looking animal costume.
Right. Have you ever seen a furry with a giant furry dildo?
Yeah. Yeah, there are people that have big strap-ons for their fursuit. There are even people that have big plush, like genitals for their fursuit too, because they don't like the look of, like human genitals coming out of the fursuit. So they'll make like a big plush version of it.
That's funny. Do you think that you kind of stumbled upon the fandom when you were, perusing the internet as a horny teenager, or younger? When were you first horny?
Oh, especially young boys get horny so young. I don't remember off the top of my head. Probably fairly young.
So do you think if you had stumbled on something else, you would have ended elsewhere?
Yeah, I truly believe it was random. If it would have been something, something completely different, I would be just into that, But this is just kind of how it ended up being.
Isn't that kind of interesting to think about?
Yeah, just kind of how the cards fell, I suppose.
Yeah,
just like anything else.
Especially when you're so young and your brain is like sexually developing, and you're going through all these emotions and like bodily changes. The first things that you see are going to have a big impact on your sexuality.
I'm curious, do you think you chose your kinks?
Well, I don't think I have a ton of kinks that I really know of. Like, I do think that a lot of the things I have issues with are from having a dad die when I was like 11, who I was really close to. So when I was in a scenario that I got to play in, it was more of having like a daddy type thing. But after that's been over, it hasn't been, I think that was something that I needed to deal with. But I did enjoy it.
Yeah.
So I don't think I chose wanting that, but I think my younger childhood experiences of really realizing what it does when people are like, oh, she's got daddy issues. And I'm like, oh, I didn't realize so much later. I was like, oh yeah, that's what happens.
These events as our childhood they really kind of snowball down the road and end up being kind of what we're into. Yeah.
But yeah, I guess it'd be like totally different if my mom had died instead of my dad. Like, then who knows what my issues would be and how I explore. And also the way that your parents love you is also one of the ways you learn how to love and express love and what you want and what you need. So it's so tricky. Interesting.
I really do find these topics so interesting because it really just ends up being kind of dealing with the hand that you're dealt. And it just so happens that this is the hand that I was dealt,
Yeah. You're just cruising around the internet and then you start finding all these cartoony things that you already love.
Yeah, I think it was just like that. You're so young. Like, I love cartoons. And then, here you are like, well, this whole scenario seems weird and I'm young and I don't understand these feelings.
Right.
Is there anything else you're curious about? I've run through my notes here of all the big kind of talking points that I wanted to hit.
Hit them.
I hit them all, I think. And most of them are like talking about, the different styles of fursuits and what are the most common like kinks you see. A lot of times you go to these conventions and you'll see like a big wolf with like a harness on and then someone kind of dragging the harness along with a leash. That's usually pretty common. Yeah, a lot of it's like light bondage kind of stuff. I mean, if a lot of these kink communities really kind of blend together after a while. If there's a kink you can think of, almost certainly there's someone in a giant costume doing the same thing or an approximation of it. Right. I'm sure we can find you a big daddy bear or something that can help you with that candle.
Yeah. I do love stuffed animals.
Perfect.
Like, I have a panda bear. His name is Pandy, and I've had him since I was 5. He's like over 30 years old.
Oh, wow. We can find you a giant stuffed costume too.
Yeah, just to snuggle with. But then, because I wouldn't want to know who they are, I would just want to snuggle with a big bear.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of times people don't talk in these suits for that kind of reason. That people, especially when you're like, this is pretty common too. People just want to kind of just cuddle these fursuits in bed, and like that's just it. And you're like, of course, like this is fun for everyone here.
Yeah. Do you ever snuggle people you don't really know before?
I try not to, but yeah, it ends up being that that's just kind of how it happens at night where I want to snuggle and here's this kind of person I sort of kind of know through proxy or, we have a mutual friend that we know, but I probably don't know their name.
Right.
Usually just anything close with people is really, really interesting like that. Because, the texture of fur is fun and you can feel people kind of like brush your back or like rub your ears or something is always kind of fun.
Yeah. Where do you see through it?
Just the eyes.
You see through the extra eyeballs.
It's just the black part of the eye.
Oh.
Right here.
So it actually lines up with your eye.
Yeah, it's pretty close.
Yeah.
It's like this vision. It's like kind of like a tunnel vision, but yeah, it's pretty
Yeah.
good.
So I was thinking, because Waffles is a little bit more of a dominant character, but Waffles also gets tied up and stuff. So I can imagine how interesting that is to be a dominant rabid animal and then get stuck tied up, and then just that struggle of trying to get loose and stuff must be pretty exciting.
I'm a huge switch at heart, and a lot of my favorite stuff are going into a scene not knowing if I'm going to be in the dominant or bottom role. And we'll bet on something or gamble over some mundane thing, or play a board game or something to define who's going to be the dominant person that night. So it ends up being like we'll play like a simple board game with lots of like little teasing and aggressive, like, oh, you're about to lose, you're going to be the one tied up tonight, kind of thing. It ends up being a really fun little night.
That's kind of hot.
Yeah,
Then you're getting excited for it. Is your boyfriend Sheep ever dominant?
Yeah, of course.
What do you mean, of course? I can't imagine being dominant like with giant hooves. I
Yeah,
guess you can like pound someone in the face with a hoof.
absolutely. You can pound them, you can punch them, you can throw them on the ground. You're in a giant sheep costume. You're unstoppable.
Is there any other like favorite scenario that you've gotten to have? I'm more
Yeah,
interested in Waffles just because Waffles a little bit more like sexy and bad.
he's a bad boy. He's
Yeah.
a very bad boy. Some of the funnest things I've ever done, kinky wise, in fursuit have been being gagged and blindfolded in fursuit, and then at a
Okay.
convention being kind of like leashed up and then yanked around, just kind of not really knowing where you are, kind of what's going on, but you're still in the costume, so people are interacting with you, not knowing that you're blindfolded and gagged. So it's a really interesting headspace.
Oh, you're blindfolded and gagged on the inside of the
Yep.
costume?
Yep. So people can't see that you're like you can't really talk, and they can't see. They have no idea that you're in this scenario. But to them, you look just like a giant costume, and it's lots of fun because you'll people just yank on a leash, and you don't really know where you are. Stuff like that's fun. Or you don't really know who the person you're with telling you, like, oh, this is some random person you don't know. Stuff like that's fun. It's just like a big power play kind of thing.
Yeah, this is another. See, it's like when I start talking to people, it all starts making sense. But like why people like things and why it's not that big of a deal. But one of my not favorite things, but I like to do sometimes is I like to walk with somebody that I know or trust, and I just hold their hand and close my eyes, and we walk
Yeah.
down the street, and you're like, okay, just let me know if we're coming up to something, like,
Yeah,
and it's like,
absolutely.
you start getting scared and stuff, but like to be yanked around, I mean, I guess if you fall in your fursuit, it'd be a little bit softer.
Yeah, it's softer, and then there's some understanding that they're not going to actually punch me in the kidney. So like there's
Yeah.
when I'm doing stuff like this, there's enough trust where I trust the people I'm with not to actually do real harm. But yeah, you could absolutely be blindfolded up and then just kind of led around with a big collar and leash, and then no one knows that you're blindfolded up, but you don't really know what's going on.
Yeah. So I didn't even think about this inside the costume stuff.
Yeah.
Have you ever, like, people I'm sure are getting have like vibrator things with the
Yeah,
remote control that somebody has?
Yep, the vibrators. The one that people don't think about are shock collars. People will hide shock collars under their suit and then, walk around, and there'll be a person in a fursuit and they'll have the little remote and go beep, and the little fursuit will do a little jump. And, only the people playing the game will know what's going on, but other people around you won't.
Wow. What other games do you do?
This is a pretty common one. A lot of times people will switch suits and they won't tell anybody. So let's say, people.
Sneaky.
Yeah, so people know me as the big raccoon, but what if it's someone else in the suit, and they're just kind of expecting that, I know me really well, so I'm okay roping this fursuiter because we have that expectation of, relationship. But actually, there's someone totally different inside the costume, that's now being subjected to this. So that's fairly common too.
Yeah, and I guess they have to kind of consent to whatever you would normally consent to
Yeah.
because people think it's you.
And then on the flip side, you'll have total strangers that'll treat you like longtime friend because, of course, they can't see who's inside the suit. So
Right.
you'll be just kind of thrown into these conversations, not having any idea who these people are. And they're going to be walking up to you like the longest friend they've known their whole life.
Is it like awkward when somebody starts talking to you and you don't talk back, or are they just like, oh yeah, Waffles is getting gagged right now?
I don't typically talk a lot, so I don't really have these problems. a lot of times like, oh, you'll just kind of pantomime a response. Like, oh, I don't know who this person is.
Right.
But yeah, there are people that will be kind of in the know, or they'll be able to figure out pretty quickly just from knowing me.
Just being in your fursuit, does it turn you on? Or it's just like a different part of your day?
Probably not just being in my fursuit by itself, because I do a lot of like regular photo shoots and stuff with it. So it's not always an adult thing, but it can get adult pretty quickly.
Yeah. Yeah. This has been really fun.
Absolutely, yeah.
Do you have something that you haven't got to do yet sexually, fursuit or not fursuit, that you would like to explore?
Which one of your friends you said had the giant cage? We need to get the giant cage going.
Your new bucket list is getting the raccoon caught and thrown in a cage?
We'll get the raccoon caught. We'll throw him in the cage. I'll get the 70s porno music going. It'll be great. It'll be a fun time.
Yeah, that does. It sounds really fun. So your bucket list stuff is more things to explore, like as your friends.
I mean, just like yourself, there's so much out there, so much to learn about. I'm sure I would meet new people that have cool ideas. There's so much out there to try. And It's also exciting.
Taco could be a sushi otter who is like, all the fish in the ocean could be running out in like 50 years,
Sure.
Yeah, and so he could be like caught and like, oh no, I need to get back to the ocean.
I mean, look, I will absolutely work with you. We can make it work. We'll get the fisherman costume. We'll get the giant otter costume.
I need to get to the ocean. I have to reproduce. They're like, no.
We'll set it up. We'll have like the horny like fisherwoman with like the little scantily clad yellow raincoat. We'll make it work.
Yeah, I think it would. I don't know. I think I might enjoy like beating a furry. Like I've never like gotten a fight with a stuffed animal or like a cartoon before.
You want to have like a big plush like mitt hit you in the chest?
Yeah, I guess so. But I want to like try to take them down too.
Do it. Tackle them. Go for it.
Yeah. Just wrestle around.
Ooh, it's fun. It's a lot of fun.
Just to wrestle?
Yeah, I mean, anytime you can get physical, because it's such a, you're hugging what is effectively a massive stuffed costume,
Yeah.
It's so big, it's so surreal that this giant animal costume is now just smothering me under its, belly.
Yeah.
It's just fun.
I wonder if they make furry costumes that have a better, are more breathable.
A lot of people just wear the heads and then like sleeves for the arms. It's called partial suiting. So there isn't really a body, just kind of like arms, sleeves, and then a head. And then that's way more breathable because you're just wearing it effectively as like a kind of a t-shirt.
Yeah, because like just wearing my mask for coronavirus and going to the grocery store, I'm like, I can't be in here much longer. I can't breathe. I hate this. It's awful.
Yeah, you get hot pretty quick, but you get used to it. And, like anything, it's just tolerance. And you learn all the tricks after a while and how to stay cool for longer.
Well, I'd like to thank you so much for sharing your experiences with us.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it's been really fun and like eye-opening. And I love it when I talk to somebody that I think could be like really out there and like I don't get it at all, and then find a common ground where I can be like, oh, okay, I see why this is really fun and why you're drawn to it and how it can be sexy and exciting.
Yeah,
I have another question. So
Sure.
like you don't really penetrate in your costume, but sometimes when you're done with a scene and you take off all your clothes, do you just want to like grab your partner and throw them down and fuck?
You're so sweaty. Like, especially as an adult, I'm like, man, the bed sheets, I don't want to watch those again. And you're like, no.
Okay. So usually when you're done, you're like, okay, I need to take a shower. I want to.
Romantic shower, that's fine.
Yeah.
But no.
Some ice cream to cool down.
just want like
Some
a
How I
Gatorade.
Met Your Mother.
Yeah. Put on
Okay.
whatever TV show, I'm done.
Okay.
It's been absolutely wonderful. Thank you, Miranda, for setting
Yeah.
this all up.
Enjoy the rest of your night and everything that you have. Is there anything else you want to tell us about, like other than your Instagram that people and your Sushi Otter is also on Twitter?
Yep.
Okay.
And then I have a more general Twitter at Flipping Waffles, and that's kind of like my safe for work, kind of like life updates account. If you're interested in kind of like my cooking or whatever generic crap I'm doing.
Oh, cool. I will put that all in the show notes, and
Cool.
people can just scroll down and click on it and give you a follow.
Cool. I appreciate it. Hopefully
Yeah,
you
thank
find
you so
your
much.
big daddy bear.
Thank you.
Have a good day.
You too. Hip, hip, hooray! That was amazing. I'm so lucky that I got to talk to Waffles. I learned so much. I hope you guys did too. Thank you guys for being here. And as always, I have to take a moment to remind us that we are so lucky to get to live in a time and in a place that we get to have sex with who and how we want. There's a lot of people that aren't afforded that right. 10% of any profits that come into Interesting Sex Podcast go to help stop sex and human trafficking. With sex and human trafficking, I can't think of anything worse than being a child who has been sex trafficked. If you want to go to InterestingSexPodcast.com, you can donate to the show to help make more episodes as well as give to the cause. So thank you so much for all your support. If you think you have interesting sex and you want to be on the show, please go to InterestingSexPodcast.com and let me know. There's a little place for you to contact me. Can't wait to see you next Tuesday to find out what the pussy drags in. Thank you to the band 41 for this really weird, awesome song that I adore. 41music.net.
Well, it's a doobity-doo. Yes, it's a doobity-doo. Well, it's a doobity-doo.